Hey, everybody out there in the virtual wonderland. I'm Chris Metzler, one of the programmers with our new film festival, the Decibels Music Film Festival, presented by SF Indie Fest. You're aware that we love to bring some of the more interesting and eclectic films from around the world to the San Francisco Bay Area. And as part of that, we just realized that there were a lot of kind of great music theme films out there in the world, and we wanted to present them with you. And so when we ran across this really wonderful documentary, Opcope, an algorithmic opera, we knew we wanted to include it. And we're lucky enough to have filmmaker Jay Shim here. Jay, thanks again for making such a beautiful film.
Thanks, Chris. Glad to be here. Yeah.
Maybe can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to make the film, and can you kind of introduce our guests this evening?
Sure. I first heard a Radio Lab episode about David and his work, and the episode was titled Musical DNA, and really got my head spinning, and never heard much about AI in the context of music and creativity before. So it set me on a rabbit hole of curiosity. Ended up contacting Dave, and long story short, I thought it's a story that deserves to be told in the grand scheme of things, because I like to say, like, in the distant future, when we're living with Android, self-conscious robots, they might view this as a sacred document of sorts, where it's evidence of early machine creativity, of their our equivalent to Neolithic cave paintings, early examples of art. So that's kind of the inspiration, kind of taking the audience through this dark cave, and slowly we learn about creativity. And the guests we have the pleasure of being with today are two of the participants in the film. Keith Musket, who's a longtime friend of David's and has been archiving his work over the years, graciously also the master of ceremonies. He plays the role of the narrator in many ways, and fills in the blanks, because I didn't want David to constantly talk about his own, himself, and he didn't want to either. So that was a way to get around that. And then of course, we're also joined by Bernard Greenberg. I call him Bernie. He's a successful programmer in his own right, and I think it would be safe to say that he is Bach's official representative on Earth. He brings such a vast knowledge, respect, appreciation for his works, and is an organist himself. And as you will see or have seen in the film already, it shows. So I'm very honored to be, with these two fine gentlemen.
Awesome. As you started kind of exploring making the film, did you know, was there kind of a thesis that you wanted to explore, or was it kind of just an adventure of curiosity and the kind of story came about and gelled together as you were making it?
It was definitely an involving approach. Originally, I thought it would be more a kind of binary dialogue, maybe between David and vocal critic. Originally, I reached out to a gentleman named Doug Hofstadter, who is the author of a book called Gödel, Escher, Bach, and they're actually friends, but I was imagining kind of this Gore Vidal, William H. Buckley kind of dialogue between the two. But Doug made it easier because he said it succinctly. Ars longa, vita brevis. He's spoken all he has, he could about the topic, and I understand, and so is Dave. So I realize, that kind of conversation is tired. AI is, it's the doomsday stuff. I'm kind of, I didn't want to go about it that way. And so over time, because I filmed the project in pieces, I live in Los Angeles, and David and Keith here live in Santa Cruz. So I would go up between freelance gigs, and then film this in parts. The film is actually, it's one continuous day in David's room, but it was actually filmed over the course of 4 years. So each time it was kind of piecemeal approach, and then I'd learn and adjust and kind of write. Background is a narrative film, so I just wanted very hybrid approach to the documentary.
And Bernie and Keith, as Jay kind of started exploring making this film, was there anything that was like particularly important to you that you wanted to make sure was kind of shared as part of the story, or was there any hesitancy of just like making a documentary? I mean, in the sense that it's not always easy when like cameras are around and things. How did you how was the topic broached, and how did you all feel from the beginning?
Okay. Keith, you want to start first?
Okay. Let Keith go first.
Okay.
All right.
Oddly enough, I have a little experience on both sides of the camera in documentaries, and so my hesitancy about it was that, in my experience, these days documentary films are very often aimed at sensationalism and not at honest content with integrity. So I spent a fair amount of time, I'd have to admit, doing due diligence on Jay to make sure he was a legitimate, honest, intellectual filmmaker and not somebody who was just trying to make a buck off the sensationalism of AI and David's achievements. So that was my hesitation, and my hesitations were quickly overcome. And I discovered that Jay is everything I would hope he would be as an honest, maybe Jay is Cope's representative on Earth at this time. But I'll turn it over now to Bach's representative.
All right. Ich kann sagen, sorry. I felt it was important that David's work be shown in its best light. I was afraid that I was being cast as the advocatus diaboli. You'd say, oh, this is no good. Look, it can't do this and this. But in fact, his stuff, David's stuff, is tremendous. And if it cannot approach the level of grand mastery or eternal art, that does not reduce the level and the reason to admire its accomplishments, which is tremendous. Indeed, there are fine differences between the work of the greatest masters and the work of his program. And although I'm ambivalent about how far we can pursue that, to whittle that down by cutting half of it and half of it until we Zeno it to death, as it were, then it's still an amazing achievement. The fact that modern medicine cannot cure all diseases does not naysay the amazing technologies of bioengineering and cell hacking and all of this stuff. So I didn't want to be too much the advocatus diaboli and wanted to give credit where credit is due. And I thought Jay accomplished that tremendously.
What do you think in making the film? This is a question for all three. Like, was there something that most surprised you, either in the process of making the film, or was there something that surprised you in just the way that you thought about the possibilities with this sort of work and even David's approach?
I just had something short to say. I was very impressed by the way Jay fixated upon my reading a list of Dutch organ stops, the back of the E-Power Biggs record, which I first encountered when I was 12. And that just something in his mind said, oh, this would be an ideal segue into the Bernie segment. And I was very impressed by that art.
Yeah, I think probably from my point of view, although I've had half a lifetime of friendship with David and knowledge of and involvement in his work, and I've traveled with him, socialized with him, done things that had nothing to do with algorithmic composition, gone camping, looked at rock art in Navajo canyons, and an aspect that Jay brought out in the film that I wasn't as well acquainted with was a really contemplative quality that David has, and a quality that I think that the film succeeds very much in, kind of identifying in David and developing as something that really underlies. We think of things done by computers as being somehow very, I don't know, mechanical or mechanistic in a way. And so seeing how the sort of that contemplative quality of David influences the way in which he's able to program music and produce the results that he does, that was a bit of an eye-opener to me. So thank you, Jay, for giving me some more, insight and vision into that aspect of David and his character and his work.
I want to respond to that. I don't know David well. I interacted with him at Stanford and he presented his work, and I gave a lecture about it. I know his work to the extent that I do, but indeed that contemplative and meditative quality. I was looking at the stuff in the forest. I didn't know that at all. And I thought Jay did a fantastic job of conveying that. And felt that he was a person, David was a person I wish I could get to know better, not as a composer of automatic music, but just as a person.
But we should all, hang out happy hour sometime. We're not going anywhere. So I'm sure David would be happy to join us sometime. I think I don't know if this answers the question directly, but I'm still learning things about Dave as his representative on Earth, I guess. But I think a lot of his style and music I've come to realize is influenced by Navajo ceremony, culture, and traditions, which I don't think many people realize. And according to he's a quarter Navajo, and he spent a good amount of time doing research into those ceremonies, and all kind of distilled into a recording album called Navajo Dedications that came out in the 70s, which is now part of the Smithsonian Folkways collection. But David's music is a part of the reason, aside from the algorithmic music, it's his actual pre-algorithmic and even post-Emmy music is very unique, and they're all sounds I've never heard before, timbres, and you can, and when I learned about this, the context and his identity and how it kind of all reflects in the music. So I think I'm really I don't know what I'm trying to say, but his music has an imaginative quality that I feel fits the overall theme of the film.
Which I guess raises a question. This is a kind of question for both Jay and also Keith maybe as well. So when I was first reading about the film, I was like, I wonder how this filmmaker is going to approach telling the story. I mean, we're working what's the kind of cinematic language, because often when you think of documentaries that deal with music, I mean, there's performance is often like probably one of the first things that you kind of think about. So with the kind of unique nature of the music that David creates, saying like, how did you decide that you wanted to kind of visually approach the story? I know Keith had mentioned this being kind of contemplative in some ways, which I think is a good adjective to describe it. But like, yeah, how did you decide that you were going to kind of visually tell the story? And also, given the kind of unique nature of the art, I mean, Keith, like, what are some of the kind of unique challenges, I guess, in archiving, projects like this?
Well, I'll take a crack at it. I'll try and answer a little bit of a question that Jay himself left a little bit unanswered there. And I forget who it was that said it, but somebody famously said that all photographs are autobiographical. And I guess you could say the same thing about documentary films too, to some extent. And I think that part of the reason that Jay was able to draw out and I don't know, illustrate that quality in David and his music and his personality is because I think Jay himself is a very contemplative artist and was able to resonate with that quality in David, or maybe it's, when things resonate, it takes two things to resonate, I guess. So David was resonating with Jay as well. I think that really comes out very much in the film. In terms of the challenges, I would personally not only hesitate to, but I would draw the line at trying to make a documentary film about music. It's sort of like, it's almost an oxymoron in a way, and a very difficult thing to do. So I think the challenge of trying to make a film about music, inherently places the filmmaker in a very difficult situation. So maybe I'm not much in a position to answer that question. Jay did it, and maybe he can talk about it a little bit more. But in the meantime, I'll hand it over to Bernie again.
Oh, gee. I didn't think it was about music. It was about a musician / composer in relation to others. I can't really think of films that are about music. I mean, maybe Disney's Fantasia comes closest. But this was really a film about the work of a person who's involved with music. And I think that would include a very large category of films, including biographies of composers.
So would you say, like, in some ways, it's about the creative process?
More than music.
Yeah.
But this did not underanalyze its harmony, or maybe it did, but this is really about the creative
we
process.
lost you on that last part there. There was a little Zoom freeze.
Okay. This did not show one measure of music and say this is A flat and this is G sharp, but rather showed David and what he says and reactions to him, reaction to his music. And other films about music are often about orchestras or performances, or they just have to do with music. It's very rare. Well, I guess composers who have YouTube channels who try to explain music, of which there are plenty.
Right.
It's quite an amazing phenomenon. Do make videos about music, but the video is not the same as a feature film.
Mm. Yeah, and how did you decide to kind of try to tell David's story visually? I mean, were there any things that kind of influenced you, or was that something that kind of came out through, was it a deliberative process, I guess, or was it kind of more organic based on your time spent with him?
Well, once it took some time to figure out how best to approach, like Keith was saying, music documentaries, usually, you have a conventional way of doing them. And I wasn't interested in doing that. So it really, I was happy to be patient and let things, grow. And it's funny Bernie mentioned Fantasia, because that eventually became that. Actually, I kind of didn't want to be a visual experience. I imagined this for a big screen. I know we're stuck virtually, but how can I take these apps, this very, dealing with abstract subject matter, how can I fuse those concepts visually and make for an engaging visual experience? So and Fantasia, that was actually in my database. So it's funny you mentioned that. Others that reminded the film of F for Fake, which actually wasn't in my database. I hadn't watched the film at all, but that film is all about that kind of the real. It's about an artist who copies who drew a lot of convincing Picassos and sold them as for real. But once I decided to Dave to focus on that outline. He's working on a new book, and he's working on 3 books right now. I think he can't make this Zoom call because of that, because he's trying to get them published. But once I figured, these are 3 kind of big picture ideas, time, life, intelligence, that it leaves room for unique visual motifs. I can separate each chapter or movement thematically. So, I mean, that it just came. To me, that felt natural, and the fact that David at the time really couldn't travel too much due to health, so I had to make it work. The beach and the forest were all in Santa Cruz. And then we were in, so David and his wife, Mary Jane, go to Santa Fe once a year for vacation. And so that year I followed them, and that happened to be, it was an eclipse summer. So, just hung out with David and Mary Jane. I think that was in 2017.
Nice. And, thanks again for sharing this film. As we kind of wrap up, I guess, like, one big picture question is, like, what do you anticipate the kind of next big breakthrough in regards to kind of algorithmic, composition might be, I guess, or what do you think the next kind of thing that David anticipates, or what's the next challenge that he's dealing with?
Well, this is sort of what I said in my lecture in Stanford, but I think the modeling of emotional spaces and stories, and he meets her and he gets angry, but then this other person comes and throws a football and the window breaks, and then they decide to turn to God, because only thus can that, but then the horse dies, and if you can construct stories, which is a very difficult thing, only then can you really construct the drama, which is implicit in great music and is more than harmonic syntax. And it's everything to do with opera and ballet and great religious music, and strangely enough, symphonies and concerti as well, but it's hidden.
I can see that.
Well, I'd have to say I have absolutely no idea, and that's what's exciting about it.
Nice.
Yeah, I can't. I know David. A challenge for David is, well, he's always tinkering. He's. I'll end it with this: that he's never satisfied with his own work, and he was at the end of the film. He was working on his novel writing program, and he says it's a work in progress. And at a Q&A at a Sound of Music Computing conference in July, VJ was able to join us, and he said that line really made him jump out of the chair, because that's what it takes to do, achieve incredible things. He turned 80 this year, yet he's still going about his craft tirelessly, and that's why he's not here. So I think it's like he said in the film, I'm excited about what new breakthroughs to come. I can't really say what to expect, but it'll be exciting stuff, I'm sure.
Cool. Well, again, thanks you again for being part of the Decibels Music Film Festival presented by SF Indie Fest. OpCope and Algorithmic Opera will be available from October 27th to November 7th virtually as part of the festival at sfindie.com. And thank you again, Bernie, Keith, and Jay for not only collaborating to make a great film, but also kind of sharing some thoughts here in the Q&A. So have a great day.
You
So
too.
one final note, just wanted to clarify because it's an abbreviation for opus. So I wanted to clarify that title opus cope as in David's body of work, Algorithmic Opera. Thanks
And,
for the yeah.
And actually, that's a good Jay, for those of you that see the film and would like to kind of continue to follow its progress or kind of share it in the world. Where can they find out more about the film and on social media and spread word, or even follow David's work as well?
I mean, the best place to start would be our website, which is opcopefilm.com, and the chat. I mean, they can't see my chat, right? So, but then it includes links to a lot of extra material behind the scenes, clips from that legendary Stanford Symposium, which Bernie participated in. A lot of, all about Dave. And then the Instagram page hosts a lot of his algorithmic artworks. So that's also, I'll type a link there.
Nice.
But
So it's opcopefilm.com or on Instagram at opcope film. So, well, thanks again, everybody. And, just really intriguing film. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.